So guys, last I did a video on this little guy, you guys had a lot of questions down in the comment section below. So I decided I'm going to do an in-depth review of this, telling you pretty much everything I know, from how hot it gets to how good the speakers are. So before we begin, you guys are absolutely insane. The number yesterday just shot through the roof. The percentage of people watching these videos that are now subscribed is all the way up to 5.5%, which is absolutely amazing. In case you're new here, I post tech videos every day, and on Mondays and Fridays we make VR videos. So if you're part of that 94.5% of people that aren't subscribed yet and this floats your boat, make sure to subscribe, ding my bell, and become part of the 360p gang. Follow me on my social media here and here because I want to know what you guys want to see. Without further ado, let's get into the video. So I had a love-hate relationship with the Razer Blade 15. It is an absolutely incredible machine that I had an absolutely incredible amount of problems with, but I'm happy to say that the newer models, specifically the 2019 models, don't have those problems anymore. So today I'm going to tell you everything I know about the Razer Blade 15 and hopefully help you make your choice for college or for gaming. So first thing we're going to talk about is the form factor. The Razer Blade 15 is an ultra-thin laptop. Now, just because it's ultra-thin doesn't mean it doesn't have its array of ports. Unlike the MacBook, this thing is absolutely packed with ports. It has a total of 3 USB ports, a mini display port, a HDMI, and a USB-C port. Now that USB-C port is actually Thunderbolt capable, so if you ever want to plug in an external GPU in the future, you have the ability to do that. Not only that, but it also has a headphone jack.
Hey Apple, I thought it couldn't be done.
And depending on whether you pick the advanced or the base model, I have the base model here, you will also get an Ethernet port. Now, there's a few more differences between the advanced model and the base model that we will talk about later. Now, continuing on to the build of the laptop, the charging port. This thing is pretty damn weird. I don't really fully know how I feel about this. It's a chunky boy, like, it really is. It's extremely hard to fit in, which is nice because you know it won't be falling out, but then if you, like, trip over it, the entire laptop is going with it. It is nice, though, because you can reverse it the other way and have it go backwards or forwards, depending on what you want to do with it. But again, it's kind of really large and kind of a pain in the ass to take around. I don't really see why they couldn't have made this a USB-C port like they did with the Razer Blade Stealths, but to be honest, there probably was a reason and I'm just not aware of it. All I'm saying is this thing could be a problem if you have a tendency of tripping over your charger. Now, I don't really know how the advanced model got its name because, to be honest, I think the base model is more advanced than the advanced model. The base model has an Ethernet port, which the advanced model doesn't, and the base model has a hard drive bay. Now, moving on to the inside of the laptop, we can see that the battery of the base model is a little bit smaller than the battery of the advanced model. But you do get that extra hard drive bay for storing your games, your video production, media, and a bunch of other things. So to be honest, I think that the smaller battery is a worthy compromise for an extra hard drive. Now, I currently don't have a hard drive in mine, but I will be putting one in the future, and I know that it's absolutely incredible to have that option there. Now, opening up the laptop, we get a glorious 15.6-inch display. Now, depending on what model you chose, you might have the 4K touchscreen, or you might have the 144Hz screen. Now, I personally have the 1080p non-touch 144Hz screen, and it's absolutely beautiful. Now, many of you gamers know that
When you go 144 Hz, you can't go back.
and the same thing applies here. I have an 144Hz main monitor, and when I got this thing, I instantly knew something was up when it wasn't set to 144Hz. The screen is beautiful, the color accuracy is great. If you're doing photo editing or video editing on this thing, you're going to be completely fine. Now, a big thing about the base models is the fact they don't have multiple lighting zones. Or that's what Razer wants us to think. I talked about this in my other video, but I am aware that many of you wouldn't have seen that video. What you don't know is that the base model does actually have individually addressable zones. Razer just doesn't want you to know this for some reason. You can actually activate them by going into your Synapse software, going into the visualizer, and choosing them from there. For some reason, the visualizer bypasses all of Razer's security and lets you have multiple lighting zones, which is great because now I literally have no compromise between this thing and the advanced model that I used to have. Staying at the Synapse software, they've honestly made it a lot better than it was. I remember starting off with the Synapse software when it was still in beta. In fact, I believe it still is in beta, but they are constantly working on it and it is getting a lot better. Recently they added the mode for creator in the Synapse software, because as some of you that have previously owned Razer Blade models know, you can actually change modes in the Synapse software from normal when you're browsing the web, etc., and you want the laptop to stay quiet and cool, to gaming, where you want the fans to ramp up and your CPU to have that extra boost. Now, creator, I believe, does the very same thing as gaming, except puts a little more power towards the CPU instead of the GPU. Staying at media creation, this thing is a beast. It handles my 4K footage without any issues whatsoever. I can scrub through the timeline seamlessly, add effects, add text, everything I want to do, and this thing will handle it no problem whatsoever. Its rendering is super fast, and it can get your videos rendered within a few minutes. Now, that's depending on how long they are, okay? I'm talking about like 10-minute videos here. If you're going to be doing Photoshop on this thing, it's not going to have a problem. Now, a lot of you will probably be wanting this thing for college. Because it's so ultralight, you can hold it with one hand, it's ultra thin, and it has a pretty small form factor. Oh, and that glorious bezel-less display. Let me tell you, this thing is actually super quiet. Until you start doing something intensive on it, like say gaming or video editing, this thing will stay really quiet during your classes. If you're just writing documents, which you mostly will be during your classes, this thing could last you up to 6 hours, which I have actually gotten out of it. That's being turned on constantly, and since you'll be moving from class to class, you will have no problems whatsoever taking this thing around. Now, of course, since a lot of you will want to get that advanced model for that extra battery life, that thing could easily last you the entire day. So we've talked about content creation, we've talked about college, now let's talk about the one sweet thing Razer is known for. Gaming, because I believe that this is what people will want it for. But before we move on to that subject, let's talk a little bit about heat. Now, the Razer Blade 15 gets hot, and I mean hot. Now, I don't have a temperature meter to show you how hot it gets, but trust me, right above the keyboard, it gets extremely hot. If you're gaming, and let's say you have this thing on your bed for some reason, don't not ever have a laptop on your blanket. It cannot breathe, it cannot suck in air. Do not do that. It gets very hot. Like, during gaming, during video editing, this thing gets uncomfortably hot to the point where if I put my hand above the keyboard, I will not be able to hold it there for very long. Same thing goes for down here, if you don't let it breathe. Now, I have a little thing that I stand it on like this to allow it to breathe, so I'm perfectly fine in that department. Now, this is because it's chassis. Its chassis is metal, and because it is metal, that metal acts like a heatsink. You can actually see this in action when you open up the bottom of the laptop and you see thermal pads going from the bottom of the laptop here, touching the SSD, and other parts of the laptop. Now, according to me, this is great, because that heat is still comfortable enough for you to hold it if you're letting it breathe, and at the same time, you know it's not overheating, because of how large this entire heatsink is. Now, noise-wise, the fans can get super loud. Now, if you're gaming, you do put on headphones, and if you're editing, you probably also put on headphones, or at least you should be. And therefore, in that regard, you probably won't hear it anyway, but it does get pretty loud. Here's a sample video. That is while rendering 4K footage from yesterday. As you can see, it does get pretty loud, and you probably would be able to hear it across the room, but again, if you're doing normal day tasks like browsing the internet, etc., the fans are actually off. So now let's move on to gaming. Just in case you want to get this laptop for VR, it absolutely smashes VR. So let's talk the internet adapter for a second. The internet adapter is actually super good. Here is a test of my gigabit internet speeds, where on Ethernet I get about 1000 meg. On the laptop, as you can see, the speeds are really good, and therefore I can play VR wirelessly through 5 GHz. Here's a video of me actually doing that. As you can see, the laptop is handling VR, and not only VR, but VR over Wi-Fi really well. Now, I don't know how much of you know, but VR is actually super intense. On the laptop, on all its cores, everything, because it has to render the world around you. So VR is actually a very good way to check how good this laptop will do in games. Because a lot of games are less intense than VR, this is a good place to start. If it can run VR, it can probably run most of your games. And trust me when I say it really can. Now I'm going to show you a little test of the speakers, because I personally really like the speakers of this laptop. They went with the approach of putting one speaker on each side of the keyboard, which I really like, even though the speaker grills are incredibly hard to clean, and once you get them dirty, you're probably not going to get them clean, to be honest. But the sound quality coming out of this is really, really good, and I do enjoy listening to music on it. So here's a sample of that audio test.
VR. Now, the solution to this on the surface is very straightforward. You need to just install a PCI Express USB card that uses a different chipset and run the trackers off that. Unfortunately, because it needs to fit inside my tiny home theater console, my VR gaming rig uses an ITX.
Now, if you're planning on gaming on the laptop itself, the keyboard is actually really nice. It has a decent amount of key travel, and I do really enjoy typing on it. It is a lot better than most laptop keyboards out there, and I would definitely recommend it. But I mean, this is Razer that we're talking about. They make super high quality keyboards, so I would expect none in the least from them. Now, the trackpad is probably one of the best I have ever used. You know what? Scratch that. It is the best I have ever used. Look at this thing. It's so massive. It's huge. It takes up most of the bottom of the laptop. It is a glass texture, so your finger just slides right across the surface. It is absolutely incredible to use, and I would never switch this trackpad out for any other laptop. This trackpad is so good that you could in fact edit on this trackpad and not have to use a mouse. I will not go as far as saying you could game on it, because gaming on a trackpad is never right.
And if you do that, I'm really sorry.
But it is absolutely amazing. Here's a sample of the microphone on the laptop and a sample of the webcam. Now, the webcam on this laptop is probably better than a lot of different laptops I've seen, which is nice to see because this is actually the main thing that was failing when I had the advanced model. So it's nice to see that that was fixed. Not only that, but I think the microphone on this laptop is actually pretty decent. So you could easily do video conferencing, and you could probably live stream with this webcam and this microphone. So guys, I think I've covered mostly everything about this laptop. If you guys have any questions about this laptop that you would like to know before you purchase, or if you're wondering about purchasing it, please let me know down in the comment section below. I will do my best to answer all of them. If you like this video and you're part of that 94.5% of people that aren't subscribed yet, again, make sure to subscribe. I'm posting videos daily, and hit that notification bell. Follow me on my social media here, and join our Discord server. Again, if you want to be notified of future videos, make sure to subscribe, ding my bell, and see you again in the next one. Peace.